Whenever one enters into duality, it is always an illusion. When you know for sure of the unity of all life, the judging begins to fade away. Every 13,000 years, it moves to a different location on the surface of the earth. And high up in one of the walls is the flower of life. They all knew this was occurring, and everybody just kept quiet and never said a word. There is a way that if you are connected to Mother Earth and Father Sky, you can just stand there and not even be concerned. And so Melchizedeck consciousness is back on this earth, helping to find ways to get every last single person through to the next level of existence. And there has never, ever been a time when we haven't found a way. Drunvalo Melchizedeck is a Druid name. It was chosen for me by others, not by me. And what Drunvalo is in Druid terminology is a little tree that grows by a creek. So there's Drunvalo trees. They're little trees, and they just usually by small little streams. But Melchizedeck is also Druid. The Druids felt that Melchizedeck was one of their most important aspects, and that they felt that Melchizedeck lived in the center of the earth. This ties into many of the indigenous philosophies around the world. But on a bigger level, what it is that when this universe was created, and at this point I'm using words, and you can't really use words to talk about what I'm talking about. And so it's limited, and you must understand that there are no words that can really truly describe what I'm about to say. So this is an approximation. But when this universe was created, it was created in such a way that God decided to step into the creation and experience it directly in a different kind of way than God had before. And when God stepped into this, and there was nothing, there was no planets, there was no stars, there was absolutely nothing. In fact, it was the void, which science now calls 0 point. It is the vacuum with nothing in it whatsoever. So there was nothing. And but when God stepped into it, the vibratory frequency of the name of God stepping into it is called Melchizedeck. It's a vibratory frequency. And then the instant later, and there is a time sequence, the Christ was created. And Melchizedeck and Christ are intimately connected together. This is why when Jesus started to do his ministry, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do anything until he became part of Alpha and Omega Order of Melchizedeck, because he had to connect to the Melchizedeck aspect in order to complete this, what he had to do here. But the moment that the Christ was created, a third component was created, that which is both the Melchizedeck and the Christ, and that we have no name for on earth, but the Hindus call it the Supreme Personality. It is that which is greater than both, or the summation of both the Melchizedeck and the Christ together. And so there was this trinity, there's three aspects of things that almost instantaneously went bing, ding, ding, but there was an order. The Christ is the body. It is the physical aspect of all of creation. So the planets, the stars, the suns, the people, and everything that we can see, and even everything we can't see, all of that is part of the Christ. It's the body of Christ. And so there were these evolutionary steps that began through the Christ, but from Melchizedeck. And what happens is there's a cycle of evolution where the higher consciousness is dropping down lower and lower and lower into levels of consciousness that are being developed, and they keep, every time they develop them, they go lower and they go lower and they go lower. And where we are right now is as low as you can get. This is the bottom. And so there are Christ levels and Melchizedek levels that have gone all the way down to where we are now. And so they weren't involved in ascension, they were involved in descending. Now we are about to go back. And so consciousness is about to make this journey back to the source. And we are about to make huge leaps and jumps in consciousness, the likes of which no one's ever seen before. And it's going to be quite a journey because we've already created it and now we're going to move very rapidly going back. It's going to seem impossible, but it's not impossible because we made it. We can do it. And the truth is that everybody is Melchizedek and everybody is Christ. Everybody is part of that energy. Everybody has God within us. The idea that there is people that are greater than other people is simply not true. We are all the same value, equal on every level. But some of us have gone deeper or farther than others and have gained certain wisdoms that ones of us don't have. Doesn't make us better. We're just explorers. And now we're coming back. We're all going to come back together at this point where poof, none of this exists. And we're just oneness again. And then after time, you realize, oh, there's another step. You didn't see it at first. And you take that step and you become an even greater level of oneness. There's over 100,000 levels of this that Melchizedek have mapped and found. And that you keep going, but eventually you come back to this place where we are one and creation is within us. And we have to make a decision. And that decision's totally up to our oneness. We can go back out of this whole level of creating things and back into the oneness of who we were before, or we can take another cycle around again. And if we do, we become a Melchizedek again. And life instantly uses us because we now know how to live in all the dimensional levels and sustain ourselves. And each dimensional world is incredibly different. It takes a long time to learn how to sustain yourself in each of these different worlds. But by the time you have gone all the way down and all the way back, you know how. And so that person becomes a lot like a white blood cell in the body. They are used by life to, whenever there is a dimensional problem anywhere, then Melchizedek goes in and says, okay, you guys, here's what you do, and we help. And that's what's going on here now. We're about to go through a tremendous dimensional change. And so Melchizedek consciousness is back on this earth, helping to find ways to get every last single person through to the next level of existence. And there has never, ever been a time when we haven't found a way. There's people from everywhere, and everybody here is into spiritual ideas and thoughts and meditation and yoga. The garbage men are into UFOs. It's kind of, that's what it is, you know. It's an energy that comes out of here. There's very powerful vortexes. It's a rotating energy that comes out of the earth. And people, the Native Americans from long ago, they treated this place as purely sacred ground. And they didn't live here. Though they built houses and things here, they were like summer place, or people that were traveling. And they came here to die and to be born. People come and they feel this energy, and if they stay here very long, it excites them, and they get interested in spiritual things. Perhaps it triggers Kundalini in people, I don't know. But there's something here. When I was doing work years ago with people, I used to do lots of workshops here. And part of that workshop is clearing emotional work. And I discovered right immediately doing emotional work here is different than anywhere else, because in other places to get the person going took a lot of energy. Here, you just give it a little push and they emotionally explode. They can't hold back. And it's the best place I've ever seen in the world to do emotional work. I've been teaching meditation since 1984, and I've been traveling pretty much ever since then. It's become, when my books came out in 1998, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, that was volume 1, that expanded people's interest in what I was doing greatly. When the next one came out in 2000, that even brought it out further. The third book was Living in the Heart, and that opened up a whole new area of meditation that I had never talked about before in the other ones. And the newest book, which is just coming out now, which is The Serpent of Light, that's not a book of meditation. That's a book about my interconnection with indigenous tribes around the world, and something that is happening on the earth, it's a very big thing, that for some reason nobody's ever talked about. The earth is an exact replica of a human being, or you could look at it the other way around. The human being is an exact replica of the earth. We don't look like it, we're not round, and we look different. But our energy field, the human light body that extends around the human being, that light body, that the electromagnetic field and the shape of the field that's inside of that body, which is around a person that's about 55 to 60 feet in diameter, and it's a perfect sphere, but inside is this very complex electromagnetic field. That energy field is identical to what's around the Earth. And NASA has slowly been able to identify all the various components in there. They agree at this point. I believe they do. And because it's the same, because we are the same, the way energy moves through our body is also related to the Earth. And so almost everybody is familiar with a sexual orgasm, but not everybody is familiar with the Kundalini rising, which is another form of orgasm. It's the same energy moving up a different channel. And when it moves up a different channel, it has a different purpose. The sexual orgasm is primarily for creation, procreation. It has much bigger levels to it that we're not aware of. And the Kundalini, its purpose is to awaken you to God and to higher levels of consciousness. Once you've had a Kundalini experience, you can't stop. You don't have a choice. You have to keep searching for that, and you will all your life once you've experienced that. Well, that's what this book is about, the new book, The Serpent of Light. The Kundalini of the planet, from a human being, it comes from the base of the person and moves up their chakra system, and it moves like a snake. It moves in a sine wave signature as it moves up the body. And in the earth, it comes from the center of the earth, the very, very center of the earth, which is the base chakra for the planet. And it comes up again in the same kind of way, and it comes up to the surface, and it links. So the two poles of the center of the earth and the pole of where it connects to on the surface of the earth, in between there becomes the chakra points of the earth. But it's temporary. It stays there only for, it stays in one location for about 13,000 years. Geological time, that's pretty temporary. And then every 13,000 years it moves to a different location on the surface of the earth. And wherever it moves to, wherever it chooses, we don't have any control over that. Wherever it chooses, the people that live in that area, and it goes out for quite a ways. I don't really know, but I'd have to I could figure that out but I would say for at least 700 miles or so in radius around that area, anybody living in that area, it triggers their Kundalini. And so what happens is those people end up becoming the teachers of the world, the light of the world. The last time, it's just moved. And that's what this book is about, is this movement from where it was before to where it is now. And the journey, the stories, the history around this, because it involved close to somewhere in the vicinity of 1,000 indigenous tribes were involved in this. And so were the Tibetans and the Hindus deeply involved in this. They all knew this was occurring, and everybody just kept quiet and never said a word. It's incredible. Now that it is moved, and it's no longer where it was and where it is now, it's okay to talk about it now. It used to be in the western mountains of Tibet, and that is, and the serpent of light is the light of the world. It is the energy that not only those people that are in that tight figure, but it's for the whole planet. It affects everyone, and so that energy was there in the western mountains of Tibet, in a remote area where there has never ever been civilization that they know of ever, and very high up in the mountains, but down in a valley inside those mountains. And long ago, 13,000 years before this time, someone built a huge white pyramid over the spot where it was located. It's the biggest pyramid in the world. It's bigger than the Great Pyramid or any of them. And I was fortunate enough to speak with the exploration team that found this pyramid. And they came to me, it's in the book, but they came to me because of something they found there. The pyramid, they said, it took them 6 months to get to it. And it's under snow the entire year. So a white pyramid under snow. But 2 weeks approximately out of every year, the snow melts and you can see the pyramid, and then it's under snow again. And so they had to time their trip to get there perfectly, and they did. Actually, the first time they did it, they didn't do it right. They had to do it differently the second time, and they made it. And the pyramid has no, they said it looked like it was built yesterday. It was flawless. It was perfect. All the casing stones were on it perfectly. No one has seen it. And there's no writing on it. There's no hieroglyphics. There's no pictures. There's nothing except for one thing. And unlike the Great Pyramid, it's not sealed. There's an opening. It's open to the world to walk into. And you walk in, and there's this huge inner room inside of it, and high up in one of the walls is the Flower of Life.
Wow.
And it's the only thing that's on there. And so, since I was teaching about that, that's what they said, what does this mean? And why is that in there? You know, and that began, that's how this, the Serpent of Light story began. That was way back in 85 or 86, some back in there. The Flower of Life is found all over the world. The Mayans knew about it here. It's at Chichen Itza, and it's at another location. They brought me down into a pyramid to show me there. But the first place I found it was on a 6,000-year-old wall in Egypt, where the very first well, I had already known about the Flower of Light before we found it anywhere, because the spheres of light, or the angels, had been teaching me for a long time on the sacred geometry and how it all worked. I mean, I remember when I was first month after meeting them, they had me create a little star tetrahedron, which I think is like this little thing right back here. And I made it out of 8 little triangles of cardboard, and I put it together, and I had it in my hand. They made me make it. And then they go, and I made it, and I said, well, okay, now what? I mean, this was like, what is this stupid little thing, you know? What is this, you know? And they were saying, well, it's really important. And so it took me a long time of studying of sacred geometry and understanding before I was able to get to the place to know what I know now. And eventually, the study of sacred geometry, no matter where you begin or who you are, I don't care what planet you're on or where, it doesn't make any difference. If you keep studying sacred geometry, you will always end up with the Flower of Life. because it's the key to everything, and it is the container of all other sacred geometry. It has everything in it. We've now checked it with tens of thousands of different things, and what we found is that there is nothing in creation, in the universe, that is not directly constructed through the proportions and the shapes and forms of sacred geometry. Even things that you would never think were geometrical. You know, if you look at crystals and you look in there and you see the atoms and how they're all arranged, you say, well, okay, I can see that. Or if you look at viruses, every virus is a geometrical little polymer in one way or another, polyhedron. And there are, some things are obvious, some things are not obvious. You look at plants and they don't look very obvious. And that takes a little bit deeper to see how sacred geometry is involved in there. Fibonacci is intimately related to how organic chemistry is unfolded, because the key that is behind everything in the universe is the golden mean, the ratio of 1.61803339, and it goes on forever. And that ratio is something that is crucial to life. Life intuitively knows this, but because it is an infinite, it's not a whole number. It's irrational. There's no place where it ever ends. Life can't work with things like that. So it discovered another way, and that is called the Fibonacci sequence. And that starts out as 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, 233, and it keeps going forever. And if you look at three numbers like 3, 5, and 8, if you have 5, you just look at the last number where it was before, it was just 3, and then you know what the next number is 8. And so life can determine how growth is just by wherever it's at. It can look where it just was, and it knows where it's going. But the reason it's important is because if you divide 3 into 5, you will get a number very close to 1.618. But if you divide 5 into 8, it gets closer. 8 into 13, it gets closer. 13 into 21, it gets closer. And so by using that particular sequence, life continues to move closer and closer and closer to this golden mean ratio. But each time it makes a growth, it actually gets closer to the perfection of that number, because that last number it just was divided into what it is now is always closer than the set that it was before. It doesn't take very long. 13 into 21 is really close to the golden mean. If you divide 144 into 233, you're really close to it. And as things get farther out, they become so close that the human eye can't tell the difference. It is the way that everything is organized. It's the way to organize life. All of your lattice structures of metals and all of chemistry and everything of that nature are all, without exception, based on sacred geometry. And you really can't understand what's going on in chemistry or physics or architecture or anything structural without understanding sacred geometry. If you don't know that, you are missing the most important key to creation, because you can't understand what it's trying to do. It not only does that, but it links one subject to the other. No matter what subject you're talking about, it's geometrical. And so once you understand the geometries that some subject is using, and then you look at a completely unrelated subject, you could take music in one case and perhaps emotional problems. And how can music and emotional problems be related? They're intimately related, but I can say that about any subject. Because if you look at music, it's all geometrical. It's all mathematics. A lot of physicists think that's the core to everything, but mathematics don't exist on their own. They came out of sacred geometry. First there has to be shape and form and proportion. Then number comes after that. It's where it came out of. And so It's just a very primal way, but if you see how music is, you can then switch over to emotions, and you can see how they relate. Now, emotions, I realize, is a good subject, because the feelings you can't imagine that they would be geometrical. Like love. Love is geometrical, or jealousy, that's geometrical. Yes, it's been proven scientifically. And so love has a shape. Hatred has a shape. Every single emotion that we know, whether it's positive or negative, has forms you can hold in your hand that are those feelings. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anybody at all in the world, just myself. And I wanted to make sure, before I went any further, that there was only one God. Different religions have, oh no, there's more than one, and each religion says, no, my God is the only one, yours is wrong. And that was what I was trying to do. I wanted to make sure that this was one coherent thought throughout everything. And by the study of that, at one point, it became very clear to me that there was a single mind that created the entire universe, a single thought. And it can be reduced down to a simple sphere. That's all it is. And the flower of life, which we showed you, is the relationship of how spheres can interlink. And when you get to 19 of these spheres, then the image pattern becomes such that things become very, very clear. But if you slowly work back through the geometry, you come up with that every single thing in existence is inside of a sphere. And there's another set of knowledge that is as old as this universe is. If you take 13 spheres that come out of the flower of life, there's a way you can pull them out. And those 13 spheres are called the fruit of life, is the name I gave to them, because there are 13 ways you can take male lines. I haven't said this. Female lines are curved. They're circular, zigzaggy. Anything that's a curve, that's female. Male lines are straight. And so if you take these 13 circles and you superimpose male lines over them, and there's 13 ways you can do that, they produce 13 different systems of knowledge that create all the little tiny details that are found throughout the universe. And there was a point there where I got into it, and I said, well, okay, I got it. No matter what we look at, no matter where we go or how we do it, it all comes back to this same pattern. And every single crystal, there's hundreds of thousands of crystals, but every single one of them comes down to the 5 platonic solids, which are one of the sets of the 13 sets of knowledge that comes out of the fruit of life. And so once I realized, okay, it was a single, whoever created the universe, it was one thought, one person, one mind. And when that happened, what we now know is that there's two sides of your mind. There's a left and right side. It's what's called the corpus callosum, links across. And when you know for certain that, every cell in your body knows that for certain, something happens to you, you change. It is a consciousness shift that takes place. I've seen it, I felt it and known it myself, and I've seen it in many people that have gone through this. At that point, your search for unity and of all life everywhere becomes far more focused, because you know for certain. Duality is purely an illusion, and that illusion manifests itself in all kinds of ways around our life. And we think it's real. We judge everything. That's good, this is bad, and that's neutral, and we keep going through all these different things. Everything that happens to us, we're constantly have this little thing that's judging. When you know for sure of the unity of all life, the judging begins to fade away. You begin to realize that it is an illusion. And almost all these spiritual religions and systems that have been developed throughout the world are all aimed at breaking down that polarity, of finding a way where you can see the unity. Well, the unity is always there. Uh, it, Whenever one enters into duality, it is always an illusion. And it's a stage of consciousness. We've got consciousness levels themselves down to sacred geometry. And you can actually see it. It has to do with the squaring of the circle. If you take the square, perimeter of a square, and then make that equal to the circumference of a circle, that gives you 1.6180339, and the golden mean appears. And there is a pattern of geometry that you can show that as the circles and squares expand out of what's called a geometrical progression. It starts with a little circle and square, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. As these things progress out, there's very definite points where they become very close to the golden mean, and as they expand out further, they keep getting closer and closer, just like the Fibonacci sequence does. And so there's a point where life becomes focused at one point, where humankind becomes focused anyway. And that level is a unity consciousness because it's very, very close to the golden mean. And those would be people like the Kogi in Colombia, or the Aboriginals in Australia, or the Waitaha in New Zealand. Some of the very, very old tribes that go back much farther than our archaeologists ever dreamed. And at least according to them, and I believe them. And but they have a different DNA sequence than we do. They're different. You can tell. You could scientifically prove if they're in there or not. And then there's us. And that's the next level out from there. And if you measure our circle and square, the one that produces our level of consciousness, it's not even close to the golden mean. We are a disharmonic level of consciousness. But in the wisdom of the Creator, in order to get from the first level to the next level, which is also harmonic, we have to pass through this place we're in. And I see it kind of like a stone in the middle of a river. And you're trying to get from one bank to the other. The two banks are harmonic. And that little stone's not very harmonic. It's not a very safe place to be. And so you just land on it and you get to the other side as soon as you can. You don't stay there. You know, well, we've been there for 13,000 years, which is a very quick jump. And but if we stay where we are, we will kill everything, because we're not in harmony with the rest of the universe, or even this planet. And so our very nature of who we are is dangerous. But we have to pass through here. We have to be who we are. It's not wrong. It's not bad. It's just necessary. And then we get to the other side, and then we're into even a higher level of unity than we were in the indigenous people. And that is the goal of everything that is going on Earth right now. In ancient times, a lot of the indigenous tribes used different forms of psychedelics, and they actually used, they never used any of the kind of things that modern man is using. Those kind of drugs are bad for consciousness, because they make you go back down the other way. But a lot of the psychedelics that they used, the San Pedro cactus and the coca leaves and the mushrooms and things like this, these were the natural things that they used. That was another way for them to begin to see that there was more in consciousness beyond it. Once they experienced it, they would search the rest of their life trying to find what that was about. In the world, there are many beautiful ways of meditation that will lead you into that. There's not just one pathway. I mean, I have been shown a pathway which I teach, but that's not the only pathway. There are a lot of other ones that will work just as well. And so Tibetan Buddhism has their ideas, and Hinduism has lots of ideas. Sufism has other ideas. Taoism is a very simple, easy way to live through, to find the source of life. There are many, and that are old and have been tried, and other people have taken those pathways and that work. If that is what someone is thinking about, they need to try these different ways. I mean, I went and I tried lots of them. I tried everything you can think of almost. I had over, I don't know how many teachers I had. At one point I counted them, there was over 70. And the angels a lot of times would actually give me the name, address, and phone number of a teacher who I'd never heard of in my life. And they'd say, call this person up, and I'd call them. And it would be that person always kind of. And then I was to go study with them. I'd say, can I study with you? Yep, I'd go there, and I would learn as much as I could from them. And and people have very different views. The truth is there's only one reality. This is what I learned from the whole thing. There is whatever there is, but there's lots of ways of interpreting that one reality, and how you perceive it. And duality that you were speaking about before, this level of consciousness we're in, this is just one way. The universe has learned over 100,000, slightly more, 100,000 major ways that when you look through that lens, the universe appears completely different. Some of them, a lot of them don't have any stars and planets in it or anything else, yet it's the same place. It appears differently. And then underneath each one of those 100,000 different ways are trillions of possibilities. And so you can look at this one, unity or polarity consciousness, is one way of looking at life. And then you look at all the animals and bacteria and bugs and all those other life forms that are generated from the same way of perceiving reality. That's all consciousness is how we interpret the one reality. And as we go up and around the body, in these electromagnetic geometrical forms that surround the body, as you do, your attention shifts to different shapes and forms. And so the Merkaba field that is taught in the book, the first two books I taught, that is the second possibility. The first one is really simple, and shamans and medicine men around the world have been using it for thousands of years. But it isn't strong enough for what we need for what we're doing. The one that I'm teaching in there now is perfect for what we're doing, even though there are people trying to say we need more complex things, because that's what the earth has around her right now. And so we're in tune with the earth, and as she moves into higher levels, we move with her. When we get in the next levels, then we can shift to different Merkaba fields. Global warming is connected to consciousness, and that would take a long time to explain, but everything that happens on the earth, the angle, the axis of the earth, and our orbit around the earth, all these things affect how we interpret the one reality that we were talking about. Global warming is nothing new. Of course it's happened before. We've traced it back 240 million years, and there's been a cycle going on for a very long time. There's a man named Dr. John Hamaker. His work was significant, and that was in I believe it was the late 60s or so when he presented that information to the world. Hardly anybody ever brings them up. But he went around to ancient lake beds all over the world and took core samples that were 6 inches in diameter and 11 feet deep, and he could see back into about 200 and something million years in these core samples. And they can just read this, and what they discovered is that the ice ages have been very periodic. Basically, the ice ages are about 90,000 years long, and the warm periods are about 10,000. They actually range from about 8 to 12, but they're about 10,000 years long. And so you see, what they found in the lake beds was, you see 90,000 years, approximately, of no pollen, because it's just ice and no growth of plants or anything else like that. And then followed by a little period of 8 to 10, 12,000 years, about 10,000 years long, of where there's pollen, followed by another 90,000 years of no pollen. And it just went like a clock, going down in for millions and millions and millions and millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. And so, sure, this is nothing new. But to say that it's no big deal, when we go from a warm period into an ice age, that's a big deal, because the average temperature of the Earth drops to minus 50 degrees below zero average in 72 hours. And that's been scientifically proven. In 3 days, it drops. And so most of the life on the Earth, if that were to happen, would die, would perish. It's always happened that way. It's part of life. It's the way Mother Earth has set it up. So we can't say it's bad or wrong. It just is. And so those people were able to track exactly what the Ice Age was tied to. And we now know it's not a theory. Well, everything is a theory in a way, because we never know what life is going to do for sure this next time around. It's like the sun coming up in the morning is a theory, even though it's been coming up every single time. Maybe this time it won't. You don't know that for sure. Yeah. But the probability is very high. And what John Hamaker found was that the ice ages were tied to minerals, the minerals that are in the dirt. When we can start on the end of an ice cycle. When the dirt all over the Earth, all over the world, runs out of minerals, and it's finite. There's a certain amount in there. When they run out, the trees begin to die, and they get weak, and diseases start coming up. The pine trees here in the United States, they say the beetles are killing them. It's not the beetles. If you go deeper into that, there's 6 diseases hurting those trees, and those trees their immune systems are getting weak, and the beetles just come in and finish them off. But if they were healthy, the beetles wouldn't be able to do this. And so, when the trees begin to die, the forest fires begin to happen, and every acre of trees, just an average acre of trees, holds 50,000 tons of carbon dioxide. And so when these forest fires move through millions of acres, it's releasing massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the air, which begins the greenhouse effect. So even if there was no people here on Earth at all, not any at all, this is still going to happen. And so the plant life holds all this massive amount of carbon dioxide. As it dies and as it burns and goes into there, it goes back into the atmosphere, and that begins the greenhouse effect. We just happen to be adding to it. We're accelerating it. We're cutting several hundred years of our life off by what we're doing. We don't know exactly how much, but 300, 400, 500 years, we may have been able to go longer. But because of what we're doing, we're bringing the ice age closer to us by adding more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. At the end of the ice age, or at the end of the warm period, which is what we're at right now, we've been 10,000 years of warm. And when we get to the end, the minerals run out, the trees die, and everything, and it goes up in there. The greenhouse effect begins to happen, and that begins to warm up the oceans. And right now, the oceans around the equator are like 86 degrees. That's not normal. They're very warm. That produces vast amounts of water. It goes in the air, tracks over, goes to the 2 poles, and begins to build the ice up. But at the same time, the warm temperature begins to melt this ice. And so now there is another factor in this which Dr. John Hamaker didn't understand. And that is the ocean currents and how they hold the weather patterns. The patterns that we know, like, in Germany they have a certain time when spring comes and when, certain days, and it's different all over the world. Sahara Desert doesn't get rain. But 13,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was a rainforest. And so things change. And why do they change? Because one of the reasons, not the only one, but one of the reasons is that these ocean currents change. We tend to think that the way the life has been on Earth for the last 150 years is the way it's kind of always been. But in fact, the climate that we're now living in is only 150 years old. That's it. Before that, we had an entirely different climate, and that was because the ocean currents in the 1300s slowed down in the Atlantic Ocean, causing what in history they call the Little Ice Age. And it was a temporary time of a drop in temperature because the ocean currents, which we'll explain in a minute, control these weather patterns, and it began to slow down. That causes, like in the United States, that causes the eastern seaboard to go extremely cold and the west, where we are now, to go into a drought. And so you can begin to trace all kinds of things when it went into the 1300s. By the 1770-something, when our country was, with George Washington was here, and you look at paintings of him going across the Delaware, you see these giant chunks of ice floating down the Delaware because we were in the middle of a mini ice age taking place. But it only lasted from 1300 to 1850. And then the currents kicked back in again, and we're back into a warm climate all over again. The Anasazi, which are another ancient group of people that lived here in the United States in the Four Corners area, they can't understand why they disappeared. They said, well, why did it look like they just left in a single day and disappeared? But they didn't tie the weather pattern breakdown at that time. And what happened was there were 46 years without a drop of rain in this area. And they had no choice. All the underground aquifers and everything else dried up, and they had to leave. We could see from the satellites and from the things that the ocean current, especially the Atlantic Ocean current, was slowing down dramatically and had reached a stage of slowdown that was equal to the way it was in the 1300s, meaning that we would be followed by at least a mini ice age very quickly after that. That would be devastating to Europe, because the only reason that they have a warm climate is because that current flows north with the heat from the equator and warms up that area. Mm-hmm. If the Atlantic, what is called the Gulf Stream, were to slow down or stop, it would be devastating to Europe, unbelievably devastating to them. By 2005, there was no doubt this was occurring, or actually 2004, I think it was, when we figured out that we had enough data then that there's no doubt. It was even changing shape because it was slowing down so much. And I went on to German television. I told them, you guys are in a lot of trouble, and you have to begin to plan. They became very angry with me. I got all kinds of hate mail and emails and everything else saying I was crazy, didn't know what I was talking about. But I got letters from Sir David King, who is the eminent scientist who was under Tony Blair, who said that every word that we were saying was accurate and true, and that he agreed with us, what we were saying. And Andrew Marshall out of the Pentagon, Bush didn't want him to talk about this stuff, but he did it anyway, and he published in February 7th of 2004, he published in, Fortune magazine, all the secret papers of the Pentagon about weather. He showed how the satellites only 30-something years ago of what the North Pole looked like, and it's like this, and then he shows it in 2004, and it's 42% melted. And the following year after that, the biggest ice shelf at the North Pole broke apart. It was an ocean of water, literally melted and broke apart. You see, as these minerals run out and they start causing the greenhouse effect and heating up the oceans, they start melting the poles. And when the poles start melting, the ice at both the North and the South Pole is fresh water, not salt water. And what drives these currents, the motor that drives these currents, is not heat, it's salt. And so if you look at the Atlantic current, it comes up by the equator, and it comes up to the surface, and it's like a hot river flowing on the surface that heads north. And it keeps going north until it gets way up by Greenland, where as far as it can go, and then it drops to the bottom. And what's dropping to the bottom is the salt. And that's what's pulling the water up. That's the motor, is this salt dropping. When it gets to the bottom, it runs along the bottom till it gets back to the north, and the heat rises back up, and then it comes back over the top. So it's a big three-dimensional circle going like this. You might just say a big three-dimensional convection current. But it is salt. Without the salt, there can't be any. And so as the poles melt and the northern currents are flowing billions and billions of gallons of fresh water, the ocean near there, the salt density drops. And so this thing doesn't fall as far, and it begins to slow down. And this is how this works. By May of 2005, I had alarmed Europe so deeply that they wanted to prove it, and England sent their submarines up to where these currents drop, and they actually measured them. They came back shocked to find that the currents had dropped by 80% of their normal flow. They were only flowing in May of 2005 by 20% of what they were supposed to be flowing. That triggered the entire European Union to come together and say, we're in trouble. Because that means that very, very soon, the kind of weather that they're experiencing is going to vanish, and it's going to vanish, if you go by scientific evidence, in 3 days. It's going to disappear. And all of a sudden, they're going to find themselves in an eternal winter that they will not see the sun again for 90,000 years. And this is the scenario that we know is going to happen because it's happened hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times in the past before. Time magazine came back with an entire issue that was a 1/4 inch thick. It was this huge thing. And they were saying, well, that I hadn't figured out the tree ring theories of what all this is about, meaning that it isn't just the Atlantic Ocean that's breaking down, it's all of them. And all the currents are beginning to slow down from this. And that means something much bigger than what happened in the 1300s. When that begins to happen, that is a true ice age, global, worldwide. And you know, Al Gore knows this, but he won't. I think he's afraid to tell the truth because the truth is scary. The South Pole is what's interesting to me because there's enough ice in the South Pole to raise the oceans a long ways, close to 200 feet or so. And I remember about 4 years ago when Larsen's ice shelf broke off. And that raised the entire world's oceans about maybe a 1/16 of an inch or something. But they said, it's no big deal. It only was there for 10,000 years. And then those same scientists said, but Larsen's B shelf will never break off because it's been there for millions of years. The following year, I think it was, Larsen's B shelf broke off. And then they made the statement that it would take 6 months to melt because it was the size of a state. You know, it's huge. But it didn't. It melted in 30 or 45 days, I don't remember. And that raised the entire world's oceans almost an inch. But the one that I'm concerned about, and the scientists that I know are really concerned about, is something called Ross's shelf. And that is a piece of ice a couple miles high. And right now it's breaking across the back. And I just spoke with one of the scientists that's working on it, and they're freaked because these holes are developing, pools of water are melting all over it, and they're going all the way down and eating their way to the bottom where they're finding it's melting completely, it's just rushing water under the bottom. That water's being forced back up, making bigger holes that are melting all the way down the bottom, forcing more water up, making bigger holes, and they think it's going to break off. If Ross's shelf breaks off, first of all, that's going to cause a tsunami or a tidal wave like this world's never imagined. If you can imagine a piece of ice 2 miles high plunging into the ocean, how high is that wave going to be? And with it instantaneously, it's going to raise, when it completely melts, it will raise the entire world's oceans almost 16 feet. And that's already been scientifically calculated. But 90% of the ice goes in the water immediately and displaces it. So you're going to have, I'm just going to guess, about 14 feet of the world's oceans rise instantly. And tsunamis coming from everywhere to balance out, and it's going to be a mass destruction like no one's ever imagined on this earth. And almost every coastal city in the world will be underwater. And that could happen tomorrow. Seriously, it really could. They can't even measure the cracking anymore, because they used to put these cables across one side to the other side, and then when they broke, they knew that it was moving. But the ice shelf itself is melting 90 feet a year. So just to see if it's moving, they have to cut down 90 feet to put the cables, just to see 1 year's of growth, because they're going to melt down to that level by the next year. And so if that shelf goes, we're going to have a wake-up call. Find out what the world's scientists are saying. It's not just one man making this statement. And but who doesn't want this? You've got all your corporations, your oil companies, and all these big corporations. They don't want you they don't want to stop using oil. They don't want to go into alternative forms of energy and electricity, which we have. We can replace every single level, and I mean every single level of technology, with technologies that are clean and far better, that would do no harm to the earth at all. But you have to remember, even if humankind was not here, this is going to happen anyway. From what I've learned through the indigenous people around the world and about human consciousness, there is a way there is a vibration and a way to be. They all talk to me about this, that they know these things are coming. The Mayans are about to give their predictions and everything on this, and they know this is coming. But there is a way that if you are connected to Mother Earth and Father Sky through your heart in a certain way, that they all are discussing with me, that you can just stand there and not even be concerned. Because what happens is Mother Earth actually changes the reality around you. She selects these people that have this vibration, these people that are in their heart, and she keeps them alive. And this is one of the big secrets about all of this that has been known before. But people have been able to change the world around where they live based on their ability to stay within their heart. If you live in your mind, what the indigenous people are saying, you don't stand a chance. We have been working with what we call reversing consciousness, just like reverse engineering and things. We started with the human light body, and we've mapped that whole thing out. And then after that, we went into the internal brain structure of the pineal gland, the pituitary glands, the thalamus, etc., and how all of that works. And just as in most human beings, the Merkaba field, or the light body, is not working. It's like a seed. It's there, it's intact, but it's not actually functioning. Even when you activate it, there's still more to it, and it's not talked about in any of these books. This will be another book coming up that it took me a long time to understand this, and it was all indigenous people that taught me all this stuff. I mean, they know the inside of the brain better than most brain surgeons. It's amazing what they know about this stuff. There are 8 beams of light that come out of the head, or should come out of the head, if the head is healthy and functioning, just like the light body itself. If it's functioning, it begins to spin and do all these things. Well, these 8 beams of light are on most people have reduced to just this little colors that are around the head. They look like fog almost. But with a certain understanding, with a certain breathing and awareness that you do, these beams pop out, a sphere of light forms around the head, and you begin to glow, and you can scientifically see it. And that is part of how this outer world was created. There's a connection through all of this. There's 3 different glands and 3 chakras that have to be aligned, and when they are, and when they're functioning together, what is called your third eye opens up, and it is prepared to receive something from somewhere else in your body, which we now know is the heart itself. And hidden deep inside the heart is a little tiny space that Stanford, through heart math, is mapping and trying to describe scientifically what it is, where creation takes place. And this is where all these stars and planets, if you go back into a book called the Upanishads, 6,000 years old, it's 108 people that went into their heart and went from their mind back into their heart. And when they got in there, they just wrote about their experiences. That's all it is. But in there, they all talk about how when you go inside the heart and you're not in your brain at all, you're in your heart, and you look around, you open up, and there's the stars. All of them, exactly as they are here. There's the belt of Orion, the whole thing, just like the same feeling of depth of space, the same everything. And it's almost like the human body duplicated this reality. But what we now know, and what the ancient teachings all say, is that that's where it was originally created. And from that image of the stars and planets and the earth included, that image was transmitted along toroidal lines of energy that Stanford has found. This is a toroidal field. It is unique. As you can see, these different colors will come through and fold on itself. So this can not only turn this way, but simultaneously it can be rotating this way while it's doing this. There is no other shape in existence that can do this. This is completely unique. It's the first shape that comes out of creation. But this shape is around the human body, and it comes out of the heart. And it's the big one, and it's 8 to 10 feet in diameter. And then inside is a smaller one that's about this big, that's around here. And they know it comes out of the heart. Well, along the lines of this inner one here, the image that comes from the heart comes up along these lines, comes to these tubes of light that are out of your head in a very specific order, and receives them. They come into this pattern in here, they come out through, and then there's a geometrical field out right at your fingertips that Leonardo da Vinci discovered. And that one is the projection screen, basically. And the inner worlds of the heart are projected out through the mind out here, and then we think it's real. And we're really walking around in our mind. It's not really real. It's an illusion. And they've said this for 6,000 years. In Hindu, it's called Maya, which is illusion, which actually means not true. And the ancient teachers and enlightened ones from a long time ago knew this. And this is how creation takes place. This might be a good place to talk about this DVD that was out called The Secret. And The Secret is how to create through the mind, how you can actually create something. You can bring whatever you want to yourself, if you're inclined to think in materialistic ways, that you can bring money to yourself, or all these things that they were talking about. Or you can create healings for yourself, and you can make your body healthy. Or you could bring people to you want. And behind that, they talk about the law of attraction, where you are, you bring to yourself whatever you're thinking and feeling. You create a vibration, and that energy begins to come toward you. Sure, this is all true, but that's assuming that what is out here is the source of creation and is real. And it's also assuming something that they didn't understand when they wrote this, but which the Tibetan Buddhism did understand, and some of the other ones were clear on. The writing of the Secret is not new. They found, Greg Braden wrote a book called The Isaiah Effect, which was based on a scroll that was found in a clay pot from about 500 BC, near where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And it talks about the same exact information that is in The Secret, that your thoughts are based on logic, and you can go through where you place your attention and your intention, and your intention has 3 basic patterns of what happens with your mind, your heart, and your body. And if you engage all these things together at one time, yeah, you're going to get exactly what your intention is. But what the creators of The Secret don't understand is the instrument that the creation is being done through is the mind. It's the brain. And the brain is a polarized tool. You've got the left brain and the right brain. And then the left and right is the front lobes and the back lobes. And it keeps going through what I believe is 64 different divisions. The same 64 divisions of the 64 codons that are in the human DNA. And so it is possible to bring to you what you want or what you intend through your intentions. But what you will also get is the exact equal and opposite force coming from behind you where you can't see. Our eyes see this way, but we can't see this way. And so you get what you want coming this way, and you're going to get exactly what you don't want coming from behind. And so, and there is now a man named Dr. James Hart out of California, one of the brain experts in the world. He's considered one of the two greatest brain experts on the planet ever to live. And he agrees with me that they've found scientifically that you can go in using the brain and you can create anything, but you always get the opposite thing also. So what's going on in the world is you've got 6.5 billion people in the world, and most of them want peace. I mean, you know, they're praying together, these huge circles of people praying for world peace. But they're never going to get world peace as long as they pray from the brain. They're going to get a world that's half peace and half war. And it's just going to keep generating that half peace, half war until they learn to create in a different way. There is another way that the indigenous people tell us all over the world, and that the ancient people, the ancient Tibetan Buddhists and the other ones talk about, that you can create, which is creating from where the original stars and planets were created, which is in the heart. If you leave the brain, throw it away, get out of there, and go down into the heart, you can do the same thing. You can create there. You can bring anything you want. You can change the world. But you won't get the opposite effect. On another way to explain this is that we have two heart chakras. One here, right above the sternum, one distance between the tip of your nose and your chin, above that, which is averages at 7.23 centimeters. Two heart chakras. The lower one is connected directly to the heart. The upper heart chakra is connected to the right brain. We have an emotional body that we're all familiar with. You know, we feel love, we feel hate, we feel joy, we feel sadness. We can feel all these things, but all that emotional body is coming from our right brain, and which is connected to this upper heart chakra. If we were to connect, what we don't know, most people don't know, is that we have another emotional body, and that's connected through the heart. But that emotional body has no polarity to it. And so there is the only place that you can experience what everybody's talking about of unconditional love. In that spot, you can actually have unconditional love and experience it. But from the brain, which is where most people get married, they fall in love from the brain, they see them, they're beautiful, they want them, they marry them. But that kind of relationship, they'll be there and they'll be talking how much they love each other. I love you, I love you, I love you. And then one will say something that hurts the other person's ego. And just like that, they hate them. And they'll start screaming at them. They'll say the wrong thing. That's brain love. But there is a love down here that no matter what you said or what you did, you could kill somebody, but if they love you, they wouldn't change loving you. That's hardly ever been experienced. Women get that experience usually for a short time. They have a baby, the baby comes up, it's on the breast, they're looking down, and now they're loving that person from their heart, not their brain. And they would die for that baby. They would die. They would give up their life in a moment. That's unconditional love. Well, in the last of this talk that we're having, I'd like to talk about this time that we're living in. We began, this change, of course, began when humanity began. But about 100 years ago, at the turn of the 20th century. At that time, we were riding around in horses. The ideas of going to the moon and flying through space and computers and cell phones and all these things, they weren't even in our imagination. We didn't even think they were possible. And we have made a transformation over the last 100 years, the likes of which humanity has never seen before. And all I can say is we're just beginning. We are going to continue on a path that is going to lead us into ways that even now we can hardly imagine. Even through everything, through Star Trek and everything that we have imagined through that, there is a change occurring that is incredible. And all I ask is that you remember that you are intimately connected to God, and that you are not going to be hurt through this. You're not going to be left behind. You are important in the universe. In fact, this universe could not exist if you didn't exist. You are essential in everything that is occurring. And all you have to do is relax, not be afraid, and believe in who you are and your intimate connection to God. And everything will happen easy, without any pain or any problems. All you have to do is just remember that you are one with God. There's going to be tremendous changes coming, changes that are going to rock this world to its roots. The old way is going to be destroyed. Shiva is going to walk again. And the financial systems are going to go down, and everything we know is going to break down, because that is the way it's supposed to be. The old cycle, the old male cycle, is always destroyed, and then we enter into the new female cycle, the female cycle of light. And she always leads us back into balance, into harmony. And it's happened so many times before. This is nothing new. But don't hold on to the old way, because the old way is going to go. It's going to go right before your eyes. But right before your eyes is something new and beautiful and brilliant that's going to appear. And know that it is for you that this is happening, and for your family, and for life everywhere. It's not a war. It's not Star Wars. It is evolution. It is part of the cosmic DNA that has been planned from the beginning. This is an exciting time to be alive. This is a time of great joy. And you will remember everything you need to remember. You are perfect right now, even though you may not think so. You may think, well, I can't even pay my bills. I can't even figure out how to keep a relationship going, and my children are in trouble. Yeah, I know. We're all going through that. But inside of you is this brilliant light. And that light is going to emerge out of you at the right moment, at the right time. And all you have to do is just believe and wait, and it's all going to happen. So there's no reason for fear. There's only reason for joy. And I love you all. I really love you. And it won't be long. We're going to be in another level of existence, at which point you'll understand everything I'm saying.